Hello my dear friends and welcome back. In this video we are going to register our user in the database. So let's go back to our code editor and we can now remove this one. And before we register the user in the database, we would want to validate the user properties or user fields and make sure that they are up to what we need for the user information. So here we can say validate user information, and we're going to do that using the validator class. So let's go ahead and say let's define the validator and put it into a variable. So let's define a variable validator which will give to validator validator like that. And we are going to say make then the user object that we receive from the other method. So user object, and we are going to validate to get all. And remember to import the validator class. So here I'm going to say use the data like that. So what are some of the fields that we would want to be validated? We're going to start with the name, and we're going to say this one is required. So we're going to pass the rule required. Another one that we would need is the user email. So we're going to say email required, and this is a string, so like that. And another thing we need is also the user type. So I'm going to say also this one should be required. And for the email should be a valid email. So we're going to say we need a valid email. We are also going to say we need a unique email, so it should be unique, and it should be unique in the users table. So here we pass the table that we want to check for the uniqueness of the email, and that table is the users table. So user type, it's also required. And another thing that it's going to be required is password. It will have two rules. The first rule will be required, and the second rule will be confirmed. So it should be confirmed. So confirmed. So you have to type the password, then confirm it in another field like that. So we are going to check if our validator passes or it doesn't. If the user fields passes the validator or it doesn't. So we can check if validator, then it's going to pass or it's going to fail. So if validator fails, what then are we supposed to do? If validator fails, then here we are going to report an error. So error, so it means there is an error. Else, if validator succeeds, so we're going to put an else here. So if it succeeds, then we are going to register user like so. So let's see, if it fails, we would want to tell the user something happened and we could not register the details to our database. So the way we are going to do that, we are going to have two variables. So we are going to have message, and message is just what is going to be returned to the user, and this one we are going to return it as an array, and this array, the first element of the array will be errors, and errors will just carry the error that we get from the validator. So to be validator message, and for now I'm just going to get all the messages that they come back as errors. So for all the messages, after that I'm also going to define another one, and this one I'm going to call it response, and it's going to be response I'm going to return it as JSON response. So it's going to get our message, so it's going to receive our message here, so message, and also the status code, and for the failure I'm just going to return 202 as the status code. So that will happen if any of these fails. So let's try that and fail it and see if it will recognize that. So I'll try to, validator does not exist, so let's go ahead, see, validator does not exist. And it should be validator messages, not message. So that's facade and family facade JSON response JSON. We should use the facade, should use the support, use response Okay, let's just go ahead and import the whole thing. Illuminate. Then we're going to go to facades. Facades. Then we'll go to illuminate, then support, then facade, then response. So here, and now we have something returned here. It's 200, so required. Okay, so we here supposed to return our response. So return back our response, like so. So let's try that one more time. Sorry, you see now we have an object, and this object also has got some errors, and we see all what we requested to be provided in the validator is being returned as an array of errors. So let's go ahead and see if now we provide the correct information to the application, how we can register the new user. So here we're going to register our user after everything succeeds. So we're going to create a new instance of the user. So we say the new user will be equal to this. We just be equal to this because remember this refers to this class. So we can say our username will be equal to, remember we are getting the user object, so be equal to user object and name, like so. Again, our user email will follow the same, so will be equal to the user object we are getting. Then the field will be email, and also our password, that is our user password will be equal to user object like that. But we will see what we will do with this password. So for now, let's go ahead and create user type, user, and user type will be equal to the user object, and then user type field, like that. But remember, the password is we are not supposed to store our password just like any other field in the database. So what we're going to do down here, we're going to create a method that validates our password, and then it gives it back when it's already validated. I'm going to call it public. In case another class would want to use this method, it will be available for that class. So you can say password and encryption. So password, let's say password and encryption, encryption, and this method is going to receive password, like that, and then it's going to take that password and return the crypt of that password, so like so. So this password encryption takes the password, then encrypts the password, and returns it back to the method which is calling this. So in the password, we are going to say password is the same as this, and remember this function receives one argument, so we're going to pass a parameter to this function like so, and that will encrypt our password so that we store our password encrypted. So let's continue. After encrypting our password, let's continue and see how we can then get the token from the Laravel passport and save our user. So let's go ahead and create our client. First of all, we are going to create our client. So up on this class, I'm going to create a constructor, but first of all, I'll create one property of this class. I'm going to call it a private, or say password client, and after that I will create a constructor for this class. So I'll say public to be construct, and it receives nothing, so it just sets the client, this client, to something inside here, and we're going to say, so this password client is equals to, we are going to fetch now the client from the database. Remember, our client, we created our client with ID1, so we are going to say client not this one, is the one from passport. So let's use passport. Okay, use Laravel passport, Laravel passport, and then passport client, like that. So So client, and we're going to find the client with the ID of 1, like that. So save that, and anytime this class is ran, we are going to get our client. So after that, we'll come down here. After getting all the user details, we can create another object down here, and this object we can call it let's say, okay, you can call it client. Properties will be the same as, and it will be an array. So it will be an array, and we start with the first element of this, and it's grant type, which will be password. Remember, we said that we'll be creating a password grant client, so grant type will be client, and then we need to get the client to provide the client ID, which will be given by our client. Remember, right now, just a second ago, we defined our password client here, so we are going to get our ID from there. So this is going to be this client, this password client, no, not that one, password client, and then secret. That will be our client ID. Another thing we need to provide is the username and password. So what happens with the username is that we map our user email to the username. So what we do here, we are going to grab our user object, this one, the one with the email, like that. So that is what we are going to use for our username. So what happens is that the username is mapped to the user email. So that's what happens. And next thing that we're going to need is the password, and we're going to get the password from, again, user object. And now this password is not going to be encrypted. We're just going to get the password the way it's coming. The passport will take the password and it will encrypt it for us. So let's go ahead and just grab the password just the way it is, like that. And again, we are going to define our scope of these properties. Or our scope will be all, so we put all, like that. That way we've defined our client properties. We have the client ID, then we have the username and password coming from the user. So next, if that's the case, then we want to save the user and at the same time creating the authentication information for this user. So let's check if our user will be created. So if user, remember we defined our user up here this user. If this user is then created, we check that by using the save method. If the user is successfully saved in the database, we continue and say take the user object request. So we say user object, and then we add to it. So let's add to this object. So user object that we're getting from the user himself or herself, and we add, and what we are going to add is the client properties. So we add client properties, which is this one we've defined here like so. So this is a variable called client properties like that. And after that, we define our route that it's going to generate our token. So we can say token proxy. It's given by request. It's given by request, and we are going to create now a new route. We are going to access a new route that's going to create our token. So create, and this one receives two arguments. The first one is the URI. So we say we need to go to auth, then token, and the second argument of this method is the method of this route. Remember, we have different methods like post, like get, like put. So this one we are going to pass it as a post method for that route. So after that, what we want to do is now dispatch this route. We want to send this route, so we can do that by saying let's create an object. So let's call it auth object, which will be the same as so route, and this time we are going to dispatch. So dispatch route dispatch, and what we are going to dispatch is our route that we created here. So we are going to dispatch this route here like so. So that is how we create the saved user token. And now if that's the case, we can continue create that one. If not, we can then say else, and here we can else, okay, else, let's do something else here. So if this is the case, then we are going to have our response. Remember, in each scenario we're going to write our response. For example, when the validator fails, we have our response. When it's successful, we have our response. So here, in case the saving method succeeds, we are going to have our response, and this response is just going to be the auth object. So auth object like so. And if it fails, then if it fails, let's say we're going to define our message, and our message is just going to be an array, and we are going to pass errors, and these errors is just going to be saying like operation failed. Okay, let's say an error occurred, please try again later, like so. So that's the kind of error message we will provide to the user in case the operation fails. And how do we get it to the front end? So here we say we define a response which will be the same as response JSON. We will convert that to JSON object, so it will be recognized by our clients, and this one is going to receive the message, this message here, and also the status code, which will be 201. For now I'll send that. Okay, this video is really getting long, so we can stop there for now. When we come back, we will continue from there. Thank you.